sorry at all. Excellent. And I want to make it really clear that it's not my agenda to try to persuade you when you find a tough question to just be okay with it and just go on and not let it disrupt your church involvement and your God-life thing. If it disrupts it, then it will need to be tended to. Not swept under the carpet with either kind of cop-out. Either kind of cop-out. One cop-out is, this doesn't make any sense. I'm too smart for this because it doesn't make sense. Because when you become a little smarter, the kind of sense it makes will be embarrassing in retrospect. People that do that response, sometimes it's just out of grief, and that's understandable, but when it's just out of stupidity and arrogance, it's just stupidity and arrogance. Sometimes it's as stupid as they just don't root for that team. They think that it's a football game in the stadium and they're wearing the A shirt for atheists and the C people, the Christians, are on the other side. That's idiotic for either team. It's an idiotic thing to do, to act like you got the C shirt or you got the A shirt. That fundamentalist, competitive team spirit stuff is for morons. And it will rob you of value either way. But I don't say that to disparage people who have just been overwhelmed by pain and not being able to find any way to make sense of it, conclude that things don't make sense, and then they meet religious people who give them answers that don't make any sense, but act like they do and get all frustrated that other people can't see the sense that they don't make. So I'm not trying to persuade you to just sweep it under the rug and just go with it, okay? I had a seminary professor, and we would ask him a question because what he was saying actually didn't make sense. And looking back, at the time I felt kind of humbled. He was, I think, a lot smarter than me. And so I was like, this is over my head, I'm not getting it. And there was people sitting there acting very serious and going, oh yeah, and writing it down like it was wisdom from on high. And we need to ask him, well, how, you said this, but then you said this, and if you said this passage means that, but then this one, and then he'd go, yes. He'd say, can you feel the theological tension? I was thinking, yeah, I can feel the horse manure. I can smell it. You tracked it in. I'm not trying to do that to you. It's not one of those. I really consider it a hazard, though, to assume I mean that because I'm saying things that don't appear to make sense. I just want to convince you, though, that it's not in a special theological or religious way that things don't make sense. The way it's not making sense is the same way physics doesn't make sense. It's the same way that the hardest sciences don't make sense when you're honest about them. Things add up and boil down to something that what we consider logical and sensible doesn't apply. That points to a different kind of reality that is beyond the reality that we experience with our sense minds, with our sensibilities, with our logic. When you start seeing things like a particle can occupy the same space at the same time as another particle, or that a particle can be in two places at the same time, but it's the same particle, and you can see it being two places at one time. Or when you find out that if you get stuff too cold, that means take all the heat away so that it approaches what is absolute zero. Does anybody know what absolute zero is in Celsius? It's 0 kelvins. You don't say degrees Kelvin. There's no such thing. It's just kelvins. But in Celsius, it's negative 273.15 degrees Celsius. equals 0 Kelvin, and that means there's no heat. It means and heat is just how much the little tiny things are moving back and forth, little tiny amounts, real fast. When you slow their motion to where they're not at all moving relative to one another or relative to their surroundings, there's no heat. And when it gets to that point, the matter disappears. You hear what I'm saying? Because the matter isn't anything more than just motion. It disappears. When you cool it enough, whatever matter you're successful in getting to close enough to absolute zero, it forms what's known as a Bose-Einstein condensate. That Bose-Einstein condensate is a place at which a temperature range affecting a sample of matter in a way that it stops acting like matter is supposed to act. That means it can be right where you're watching it, and then in no time at all, it can be outside of the container, just hanging out, phasing in and out of existence in front of your eyes. Now that's hocus pocus stuff, isn't it? Magic. Supernatural. But it isn't supernatural. Now I'm going to make a statement, and I will put this on the quiz and the test, so you might want to be really careful how you hear this. It really matters that you not mishear this. And before I say it, I want to tell you, I actually believe that we could have been there and observed with our senses Jesus raising corpses up, and then they were going about like they were before they got dead. And I believe that Jesus was able to walk like the Jesus insect that can walk right, the Jesus bug that can walk right on the water. Jesus, being a normal-sized man of his culture and his era, could walk on the water without breaking the surface tension, staying up on top. I actually believe that actually happened, just like it actually happens that you're here and you wrote the quiz and turned it in this kind of actuality, not in the we talk that way at church kind, or it happened in faraway places in a land a long, long time ago. It really, I think, happened. But I don't believe in, ready for this? I do not believe in the supernatural. Did you hear that? I do not believe that there's any such thing as anything that's supernatural. Think about what supernatural means. It's a term we use to say that we don't believe it actually happens or is real. And that's all it is. It's that box for things that we say when we go to church, or when we're with our weird friends that do crystals and things like that, and tarot cards and have funny incantations and stuff, or wherever, but so that we can, kind of get along and be part of the fellowship. But, you know that's not really going to happen when you're actually looking. Because it's not like actual real, it's not natural, it's not part of nature. It's not something you could ever observe that could interface with the natural world or anything that you could ever measure and have science with and all. Can't be observed by the senses. It doesn't have mass. It doesn't occupy space. It has no physical reality. I don't believe in anything like that. I believe in miracles, but I do not believe in the supernatural. Because what is something's nature? What's my nature? If you say that I have long green hair, that is not my nature, is it? If you say that I'm quiet and I'm afraid of people, would you accept that? It's ridiculous. If you say I'm a little guy, and I'm a teenager, that's all ridiculous. It's not my nature. But you could describe anything that's true for me, and that would be my nature. If you describe the nature of the desk at which you are sitting, you could give a physical description of it, the real description of it, how it is, instead of how it's not. Nature, when That's how the book Steps to Christ starts, as you noticed again in the quiz, and some of you are going, ooh, I should have at least looked at the first page. Nature and revelation alike testify that God is love. That means give evidence, okay? Give evidence of a loving God. That means when you say nature like that, or when you subscribe to the journal Nature, its subject matter is stuff you can study with science. It's the natural, it's the way things are, it's reality. So when you say it's supernatural, you're saying it's other than reality. It's beyond reality. You got reality, and then you got this stuff. So I would encourage you to watch what language you allow yourself to use. It betrays your actual belief system, betrays your schema, your worldview. So you won't hear me saying that I think something is of the supernatural unless I'm saying I don't believe it is true.
So what word would you actually use instead of supernatural? You're trying to explain like a demon possession or something.
Paranormal?
Paranormal.
Yeah, I'd say it's very unusual. It's highly improbable. It's rare. Think about people who don't believe in stuff that you can't repeat. I mean, the scientific credo, right? It's not science unless you can repeat it, right? Go ahead and let's do that with the Big Bang. See, she thinks it's ridiculous too. They probably sounded something like that. I don't know that there was sound because there has to be just the right kind of air molecules in the right ratio to have sound. It has to be eardrums possibly to have sound. There weren't eardrums by that myth. But you take somebody who's a hardcore, militant, bigoted scientist, a follower of scientism rather than science, actually, and that's when you make a religion out of it and get to be a fundamentalist poophead like religious people can get to be. That's what scientism followers are. Same as religious nut jobs. Go ahead.
And how do you describe like what Ellen White countered? Would you say that's anywhere? Can some people say that was supernatural?
No, unless she's lying. Unless she's lying or just crazy. If it happened, it wasn't supernatural, but it was really paranormal. It was abnormal, wasn't it? It's not usual. Does it happen to you? If it happens to me, I will let you know.
Well, so you can't really define anything supernatural. So if you're
Right.
saying something supernatural, you're telling them, I don't believe it happened, rather than
Harry Potter is supernatural
it's fiction.
because it's fiction. It's okay. Many of our myths, they probably didn't happen that way. The myths that we used to, I mean, in the Aboriginal Australian, some of the people groups in among the Aboriginal Australians have a story about the Creator laying down for a nap and the bandicoots coming from under the armpits of the Creator. I don't think that captures the essence of my model of creation. But it's very real, or has been to people. That's a myth. Like the Big Bang is a myth.
This difference between what you're saying is paranormal and supernatural is what exactly are you? What do you mean by that? They're different. Because
I think when you say something supernatural, you're saying that it's not true. When you're saying that it's paranormal, you're saying it's unusual.
Okay.
It doesn't usually happen. You can watch it for a long time and it probably won't happen, but it does happen. Have you ever had something happen to you that's so out there that you go, that if I do this all day, that's not happening again. You can have weird stuff happen. But some people learn that once something has been done that's really unusual, it's like it notifies them that it's not impossible, and then they just go ahead and do it.
And that's paranormal.
It is paranormal until it becomes common. Then it's not even paranormal. It becomes very normal.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time where people said that human beings could not run a mile faster than 6 minutes. 6! There's probably people here that have done it. And you didn't get any fame for it. But I mean, it was at one time a world record. But now, nobody's been able to do a 3:30. Darn close, they're in the kind of middle 40s, but it's been decades since that was set. So I think people don't get that you could run a 3-minute mile. They will. And once somebody has, then others will, and it won't be that interesting. But it'll be really interesting to me right now if I hear today that I don't care who, somebody without special surgery or extra red blood cells or anything, no Lance Armstrong stuff, they actually just ran a 3-minute mile. I'd be amazed. I'll be right back.
I feel like when people use supernatural, they're using it as a hyperbole to like, exaggerate how amazed they are. So if someone does run a 3-minute mile, they're saying like, wow, that was supernatural. Someone's like, wow, that's true. Like that would never happen. So if we're describing Jesus with this hyperbole, doesn't it make it like show how amazed we are?
I think it does something to it does something to help program our schema when we use the language like that. You can't choose your schema. The underneath part is kind of like what seems certain way. You can't go, okay, I'm going to change that. I'm going to make it seem otherwise. But over time, it changes as it's exposed to things. But you don't have direct access to it, really. You have kind of indirect access. Kind of like training another animal. It gets it sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. And over and over and over. And by beholding, we become changed and all that. But the things we say and do, then we kind of ratify those with cognitive dissonance. We condition ourselves too when we accept what the culture. Our very language structures what we even see as possible, and our brain will comply. If you go to cultures where they don't have a word to distinguish between two colors, when you and I have that word, and it's between two other colors, we think of it, okay, it's kind of not this, and it's kind of a little more red than that kind of thing, but say a culture without the word orange. If you go to a culture like that, when they don't have a word for the color, and then you put a character or a picture in that color against one that's the next color for us, it's invisible. They're the same color. The brain activates the same neurons for color for both of those shades because there's no word for it. It becomes the reality. Remember we were seeing that before, the people that couldn't see the tall ships in the legend. Until, by the way, their chief was standing with the landing party, and the landing party was pointing it out and saying what to look for, and then it became visible for the chief. And when that happened, it became visible at that point for everybody around, which is kind of bizarre. There's something super normal about that.
So, originally, you were saying that the term supernatural was possibly an okay word used for abnormal, but society's given it a negative connotation to believe.
No, I'm saying that society's been using them interchangeably, and that is closing off a category. It's combining two categories, just like people that don't have the word orange could combine, they lose it, it's gone. So we lose the notion of believing. It's just not real for us, that stuff that we can't measure. And that science doesn't tell us with the right people with the right glasses and lab coat and clipboard and degrees, or they came from Harvard or something. They have to tell us now this is real. If you have not studied quantum mechanics, if you really don't know, you've just heard the term a little bit, or you've seen it in the cartoons or something, and it means really diddly to you. If I explain to you quantum mechanics, like entanglement, superposition, and the thing I just said about the Bose-Einstein condensate, when I start talking like that, you're going, no, that's crap. That's what your brain says. This is no. Now, unless the fact that I'm here and I'm teaching and have a suit and I'm older than you and I've gone to school and all that, you go, oh, well, that's news. But for the most part, when you hear people say that, especially if you heard somebody looking disheveled and sitting upside down on the bus seat, talking nonsense like that, you would go, what a crock. Because it wouldn't sound real to you. But if you were a quantum physicist and you heard somebody, even though they looked like a wino, and they were saying all this stuff, you'd listen and you'd go, that's right, buddy. It wouldn't seem unusual at all, because it's already in your schema. So the reason I'm belaboring this, when you're going, what the heck is he talking about all this crap for in a spirituality class? This has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with it. If you'd like some generic nonsense, I'll give you some proof texts to look up and some worksheets, and you can do those and go home and say you had a good feeling. Or we can address the schema and we can move on to say, wait a minute, there's actually some real stuff out there that is really unusual that you could actually be doing. And that is what Ellen White meant by experimental Christianity. Yes? Would you have your hand up?
No, I mean, so are you talking about that society has a bad definition, or are you saying that the actual definition of supernatural doesn't fit into Christianity?
Oh, it fits into Christianity. And I'm using Christianity in the broader sense. But it doesn't fit into what was going on in Jesus' life. Christianity is a little ways away from what Jesus was trying to get Christianity to be. Well, actually, he wasn't trying to get Christianity to be anything, because there was no such thing. He was gone before there was any such thing. It came about after he left. Well, it didn't. It's kind of similar to what the disciples' agenda was while he was right there, and they would never. And he was rebuking them all the time. And as soon as he was gone, then it was like, okay, now that thing we were trying to do when Jesus wouldn't let us, let's do it now. That's what they did. The book of Acts is all about that.
Yeah.
If you don't believe me,
No, I did.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you a really, are you kidding me kind of example. You remember Jesus washing the feet? Seventh-day Adventists celebrate that, and it's one of the richest spirituality exercises inherently. I mean, we can muck it up, but it's huge. It's a huge spiritual exercise. I mean, you can have transcendent, next level experiences with that, and it ties into total transcendent enlightenment. But Jesus was demonstrating that our job is to do the humble service. Now, skip ahead, and we're trying to figure out what to do about the fact that those Greek folks, those Hellenists, are murmuring that we're letting our old lady widows not get any food at potluck. And we're having potluck every day. So they're actually having a hunger problem. They're not getting fed because we're pigging it. And all the strong people are getting there going, yeah, I hope she gets some, but I got a lot of stuff to do here. And so it wasn't even bothering them until someone was making a PR problem and hurting their reputation. It wasn't even bothering them. Someone outside had to point out. I was like, oh yeah, gee, they're starting to talk about us. We better call PR and tell them to put out a memo, spin some nonsense. And so they said, okay. And then we go into what we read when we have deacon ordination in church, right? We go into the story. Okay, let us select, and then we go through the qualifications, and they're going to this and they're going to that and everything. But hidden right before that, right between those two things, what I said first and what I'm saying now, is a little thing that says this. You ready? And I'll say it in the King James, and then I'll translate into real English, okay? I mean modern English, all right? It is not meet that we should take away from ministering the word to serve table. I think you probably get what I'm saying. Even in 400-year-old English, it says, well, it wouldn't be appropriate for us. We have to do theology and preaching. We shouldn't be waiting on tables. Put that together. That's not a little bit different emphasis. Oh, they got a cool style. Here's Jesus style. Here's theirs. I like theirs. No, that's totally missing the whole point. The whole point. What we're doing is we're trying to, with our fallen minds, is we're trying to sort of divide and conquer reality. Our desire to become God is the basis of sin. And the epitome of sin is when we feel like we even have divided humanity up. Like you can divide up your coins into the different pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, 50-cent pieces, silver dollars, or paper money. And you can do it like that, get it all divided up and have categories. Then we can control it. We can number it. We can count it. We can and it's like divide and conquer. Then I can feel more like I'm in control. Then I got to do my employee evaluations because I got to have some quantity in case I need rid of that person. I got to paper it so that I can. The ultimate evil, the end game of that whole sin thing, is when we thingify. This will be on the test. Is when we thingify a human being. The ultimate evil is when we thingify a human being. Jesus made that point over and over and over. He said, hey, look, when you do it to the least in your value system, to the riffraff, to the pauper, to the little poor kid, to the little beggar when there's 9 of them following you because you just got out of the taxi cab and they're all wanting to get a coin or candy or whatever. But when you think, oh, they're all dirty and everything, and they have pussy open sores, the least of these, the prostitute, the stoner, out of his mind, will work for weed, will not work for weed, why lie, just give me some money, holding cardboard sign, smelling like wee-wee kind of guy. The least of these, when you do that to them, not, I'm going to count it as you're doing it for me, not, let's pretend so that you'll be nice instead of being a jerk face. It says, when you do to them and how you do them, you actually do to me. Now, you can look in the book of John, and you will come to this. Some of you, I hope, already have. Jesus says that he and the Father are one. And he says we should be one with him. And he says we should be one with one another. How many? One. Do you know that he even... Now, you want heresy? I'll give you heresy. Do you know Jesus even... And it really ticked off the people, and you'll come to it when you're reading. I hope you're doing it. You're going to miss some real value if you don't. But it really picked up people's attention when Jesus said, when they were saying, well, what are you calling God your Father for? You know, what are you, you're a blasphemer. And Jesus said, doesn't it even say in the Old Testament that you are God's? And they picked up rocks. That's what it said next. And then they just picked up the stones. They just cut right to, you're dead. You're a dead man. Kill him. Okay, kill him. I just heard some guy doing a really cool talk that was going, somebody texted me the thing or put it on Facebook as a message or something. Some guy at the Royal Society of the Arts gave a talk on solving for happiness. There's a book that's just come out last month, Solving for Happiness, March 17, I think it was released. Solving for Happiness. He was the director of the Google Moonshots program, and he's telling about solving for happiness like it's a function. He's going to solve for that variable in human existence, and did a cool job of it, by the way, for happiness. And he's giving an illustration, and he says he's talking about how we kind of naturally handle information that is not what we were hoping for. Somebody sends us an email that puts us down and everything. He says, with a very cool Indian accent, he says, and they send you an email and it puts you down, and the first thing you say is, kill them, kill them. He said, no, don't kill them. But he says, there's that part of you that says, man, what if they were dead? What if they just died? You know, just sort of that automatic part. They were at that point with Jesus for saying these blasphemous things. But here's the thing. It looks to us in our world like everything is separate. Everything's separate. And I'm separate from it. I'm different than everything else. What happens to you is your problem. What happens to me is my problem. We're getting to what sin is here. We're getting to not being enlightened. We're getting to darkness when we think that way. Jesus was over and over making the point that above this level that we're at the next level, when you just add, you can do it mathematically like I did. You can just make it 5 dimensions instead of 4. And it's not so simple because things can actually be at the same place at the same time. Well, how is that? And remember I said, at that level, cause and effect doesn't even really make the same kind of sense. And we're trying to figure out whether we should defend God or blame God or whatever. Because we're asking cause and effect questions when we're trying to hold somebody accountable for it. Like, whose fault is this? Damn them. Even if it's God, ultimately, in your universe, if he did this and he could have stopped, then we'll damn him too. But Jesus was saying, no. It's not actually separate. It all meets there. It's just when it casts its shadow here, it looks separate. Like the blind men that were holding on to different parts of the elephant, trying to describe it to somebody. And you got one of them holding on to this part of the elephant going, it's a tree. It's like a palm tree or something. It's some kind of tree that had a leg. They were holding on to a leg. And one of them is messing around with the trunk. And they thought they put their finger in the mouth of a snake or something. Ooh, baby, but it doesn't have any teeth. But it's a snake. It felt like it, holding it. And then someone else is going, it's kind of a frayed up old kind of rope, because they had the thing by the tail. And Jesus is saying, look, I know here, and I'm here to see it with you. Take my word for it. I know now what it looks like here. I knew, but I want you, but now it's really clear. I'm one of you. I know it looks like it's all separate. It looks like she isn't really her, and she isn't him, and none of you are God, and none of you are the planet. But the way that you do that doesn't actually fit the reality of things, and even science. When you go far enough asking the honest questions, you get to the point where you're going, oh shoot, man, the way we divide things up doesn't work out. And we realize that the way we divide things up is a metaphor. And it only has usefulness to a certain point. But it's not useful when we try to decide how to love other people. Because we need to lose the concept. And this happens when people are spiritually enlightened. And they can get spiritually enlightened praying. And sometimes they end up hacking the mechanism with lots of collateral damage that can very well happen by taking acid or something, or mushrooms, or whatever. And then all of a sudden, when they're kind of able to take in their surroundings again, sort of, they're going, hey, did you know that things are really separate? That things aren't separate? Yeah, no kidding.
So, two-part question. First part, do you think hacking the mechanism or getting it through God will enable us to perform miracles?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I don't think we need to do that. You don't have to take dope to perform miracles. That's not a good route.
But we can hack it both ways. Would that be fair to say, or no?
People do hack it both ways, but I think that when you hack it, instead of doing it the way that's laid out and that's responsible and that's wholesome, what happens is a little bit like if you just let your 3 and 4-year-olds have sex. They're just not ready for it. They're not geared for it. It's like when a big old grown-up is abusing a little child. does us all kinds of damage. There's nothing good from that. And it's because they're not at that place. They don't have the development for it, so it hurts them. That's what I think happens to us when we juice it.
The second part, and I won't be upset if you fail again.
Listen to him reminding me.
But the second part is,
He didn't even put up both hands. Of course, then we'll go to
well, the
3.
10 fingers. The reason why I say that is because, you know, when we were talking about supernatural, I just looked up a text here real quick, in one of Ellen White's writings, and what came up is that, you know, when Paul was working with the Ephesians, I think he was addressing maybe an issue where the goddess of Diana was
Right.
empowering them, and she says, she uses the word supernatural, but maybe it's because at her time that was
Yes.
the word to be using. But she does mention miracles before supernatural miracles afterwards, and gives an emphasis of, you know, God always displays like his miracles are
Well,
much grander. You know what I mean?
I'm making a distinction she didn't make.
Yeah. And what I picked up here though is that, you know, even in the time of Egypt, when Moses was doing like the snakes, yeah, they represented these miracles. So I would believe, I guess that's hacking, right? But then God's snake ate the other snakes and
Right.
said, I'm actually the one that's actually doing this here.
Right. And they might have been doing some sort of supernatural magic or some cool sleight of hand. I don't know.
Because she says that he actually does things, and it makes
Yeah.
it very visible that there was
Sure.
more power.
And
there.
people do too.
So you're saying, more or less, that spirituality is just basically a term coined by humanity to attempt to understand God, like basically is our way of boxing things.
Not just God.
In reality.
Because all the weirdo stuff goes there too. The woo-woo stuff gets called spirituality. I mean, it gets confusing when you say we're against spiritualism. People are going, well, that sounds like a good thing, spiritualism. Aren't you into the isms of spirituality? No, not spiritualism or spiritism. Ellen White uses the term spiritism, talking about Ouija boards and making people float and all that stuff. We're going, no, that's not what we mean. But the term spirit means air. It's something that we can tell it's doing stuff, but we can't see it and we don't understand it. And it's really important, like the air, we know it's really important, but we're not even sure what it is. So Christian spirituality, though, which is our focus and our aim in this class, isn't all that other stuff. It's a subsection of it. Some spiritual stuff I don't think is very wholesome at all. Makes you more of a bigoted idiot. I mean, people can meditate on their racism. They have. They pray before they go into battle to do genocide. That's sick, right? But we're not talking about the sick stuff. We're talking about the stuff both that could be better, that's characteristic of Christian spirituality, and we're talking about Christ's spirituality in this class. And we will be transitioning next week. I'm going to start saying, want to try some stuff? Want to put on your lab coat? I'm going to postpone the midterm. Is that okay? Good, okay. I'm going to postpone it. We'll talk about it next week. I'm very worried about that. We should be. That's wisdom.
What was the last pair? It was all of the above, right? C.